Welcome to my channel. Tonight's story is about a summer getaway that turned into a nightmare, when a knock at the door brought back someone who had vanished, but came back wrong. This is why you should never open the door, no matter who it sounds like. Summer in rural Georgia was an unbearable mix of sticky heat and long, restless nights. For 17-year-old Jamie Nichols, the last week of July meant one thing. Freedom School was a distant memory, and his parents had finally given in to letting him house-sit his uncle's lakeside cabin for the weekend with two of his closest friends, Devin and Ash. No parents, no rules. Just a small A-frame surrounded by pines and that wide, dark lake glinting under the moonlight. The three of them arrived on Friday afternoon, buzzing with adolescent anticipation. They hauled in bags of chips, crates of soda, Bluetooth speakers, and portable chargers, ready to stay up all night talking about music, girls, and anything but real life. The cabin was small but charming in a rustic sort of way that it creaked when you walked, and the smell of cedar lingered in every corner. Jamie's uncle had left a short list of rules, scrawled in red ink and taped to the fridge. Don't go swimming at night. Keep the cabin locked. At sundown, not go into the basement. It read more like a dare than a warning, and naturally, Devin laughed the moment he saw it. What is this, a horror movie checklist? He chuckled, slapping the note. Who even puts don't go into the basement anymore? Ash, the more cautious of the three, frowned. Is that a joke? Jamie shrugged. Uncle Mitch is kind of a weirdo, but harmless. Probably just doesn't want us messing with his tools or something. By sundown, the cicadas were screaming from the trees and the sky was bleeding into a velvet dusk. The lake reflected the last blush of daylight, and the woods were swallowing the warmth. They grilled hot dogs on the deck, joked about how haunted the place looked, and tossed cans into the fire pit. There was no reception out there and no internet. Just them and nature and the oppressive weight of nighttime. At around 11:00 p.m. Devin disappeared into the cabin to grab more snacks. Jamie and Ash stayed outside, watching a frog try to escape the edge of the firelight. A few minutes passed, then 10. He taking a nap in there? Ash asked. Jamie got up and stretched. Probably digging through the pantry for the last bag of pretzels. I'll check. He pushed open the screen door and walked inside. Devin? He called, only half-serious, and no answer. The kitchen was empty, so was the living room. Dude, if you're trying to scare us, not funny? Jamie muttered. A flicker of light caught his eye from the hallway. The basement door was slightly ajar. Jamie stared at it. The heavy wood door was usually stiff. You had to tug it hard just to open it, and yet now it stood open like someone had just walked through. He hesitated. Devin? Still no answer. The air felt noticeably cooler around the doorway. He stepped closer, peering down into the black. Hey, Ash said behind him, making him jump. Where is he? Jamie gestured to the door. I think he went down there. Ash frowned. You're kidding. Nope. Ash leaned in and called down. Devin, seriously. Come on. Silence. Jamie grabbed the flashlight from the wall rack and flicked it on. All right, I'll check. You sure? 2 minutes. Tops. Jamie started down the stairs. The beam of the flashlight quivered against the walls, revealing cobwebs, old gardening tools, and a folded-up ping-pong table. To the bottom was a cement floor and an unfinished basement that smelled like wet stone. Devin? He said again. The light caught something on the far wall. A narrow crawl space, doorless and low. He'd never noticed that before. Dude, if you're in there, you're seriously being a dick. Suddenly, something moved. Not a person, a shadow. It didn't run or skitter. It drifted, just beyond the beam of the light. Jamie froze. He took a careful step backward. That's when he saw it. A shoe at Devin's left sneaker, lying alone near the crawl space entrance. His blood chilled. Jamie turned and bolted up the stairs 2 at a time. Ash was waiting at the top, face pale. Where is he? I I think something's wrong that he's not down there. Just his shoe. What? His shoe. Man, that he wouldn't have just taken it off. They locked the basement door, then the front door, then every window. Jamie called Devon's phone. No bars, just a dead line and a sinking feeling. Ash refused to sleep. Jamie sat by the window with a baseball bat, eyes flicking from shadow to shadow beyond the porch light. Around 3:12 a.m. There was a knock. Not a loud one, not a soft, measured knock on the front door. Ash sat bolt upright. Jamie held his breath. Knock, knock. The screen door creaked as if someone shifted weight. Jamie tiptoed to the front window and slowly pulled back the curtain. What he saw made him stumble backward. Devon was standing there, barefoot, eyes wide and white, face blank, but his skin was wrong, too pale, his lips too dark, and something was moving behind him, something tall. Jamie whispered, "That's not him." Ash started praying. The knocking didn't stop. Then the doorknob turned. Slowly, click. The knob turned with the deliberate patience of someone, or something, that wasn't in any rush. Jamie stepped back, baseball bat still raised, heart pounding like a war drum inside his chest. Ash whimpered, scooting closer to the back wall of the living room, as far away from the front door as possible. The sound of the knob twisting again echoed through the small cabin, followed by a final mechanical click. The lock, hadn't they locked it? They had. Jamie remembered clearly. He double-checked it himself, so how? Before he could finish the thought, the door creaked open just a sliver. Moonlight spilled in across the hardwood floor like a blade of ice. Jamie's grip on the bat tightened. And his body screamed at him to move, slam the door, yell, run, anything, but he couldn't. Not until he saw it again, the figure outside still standing there. Devon, or what looked like Devon. But the thing that stepped forward through the crack wasn't Devon. Not really. It wore his body. Same brown curly hair. Same lean, wiry frame. Same stupid hoodie with the logo of their high school band. But the face was off. Hollow. The eyes too glossy. The mouth just a little too wide, as if it had been pulled open by invisible hooks at the corners. And there was nothing behind those eyes. Jamie choked out a sound. He didn't mean to. It just escaped. That's when the thing twitched. Like a puppet whose strings had been yanked. It snapped its head toward the sound with unnatural speed. The eyes focused directly on Jamie through the half-open door. It smiled. But it didn't blink. Ash saw it too and shouted, "Shut the door!" Jamie lurched forward and slammed it shut, locking it and throwing the chain back on. They both stood there, panting. Nothing happened for a second. Then came the knock again, gentle, measured, too calm. Then a voice. "Hey, open up, man. It's me. It's Devon. I'm cold." But it wasn't his voice. Not really. It sounded like Devon, but there was something plastic about it. Like a recording, slightly off, too flat. Ash whispered, "We're not alone here. No kidding." Jamie could feel it now, a presence in the cabin, thick and old, like mildew in a house left untouched for decades. He grabbed his phone again. Still no service. The voice at the door kept repeating, "It's me. It's Devon. Let me in." Pause. "Hey, open up, man. It's me. It's Devon. I'm cold." Like a skipping record. Ash reached for his pack. "We need to leave. Screw waiting for morning." Jamie hesitated. Outside might be worse. Another voice came from the back window. A girl's voice. "Jamie, please help me. It hurts. It hurts so bad." It was his sister, but she was home, hours away. Ash backed away, trembling. "That's not real. That can't be real. Please, Jamie. You have to come to the basement. He's down there. You have to bring him back." He turned toward the basement door. It was open again. Wide open. Ash grabbed Jamie's arm. "No, don't." But Jamie wasn't listening. Something had pulled at him, like an anchor dragging him underwater. He could hear her voice now inside his head. Not through his ears. It coiled into his thoughts like smoke. Jamie blinked. His feet were already moving. Ash tackled him. They crashed into the wall hard, knocking over a lamp and nearly falling through the coffee table. "Wake up!" Ash screamed. "Snap out of it!" Jamie gasped like someone waking from a dream. He looked down at Ash, horrified. "What the hell was that? You were walking down there like you weren't even awake. I heard. My sister. No, you didn't. Whatever's in this place. It gets into your head that it knows what you love, what you fear." Something slammed into the front door, hard, then again. Then the windows began to rattle violently. The thing outside was no longer patient. "We need to hide," Ash said. "Somewhere that thing can't follow." Jamie pointed toward the attic hatch in the hallway. It was narrow, cramped, and terrible. But at least there was one entrance. They rushed up, pulled the ladder in behind them, and braced the hatch shut with a broomstick handle. The attic was stifling, filled with insulation, cobwebs, and boxes of old photographs. They sat in the darkness for what felt like hours. Every so often, they heard footsteps below, sometimes whispers, sometimes laughter. At one point, something climbed onto the roof, creak, step, drag. Ash was nearly catatonic by sunrise. His lips moved, but no sound came out, just prayers. Jamie leaned against the wall, eyes wide open. When dawn finally broke, and the light came spilling in through the attic vent, the cabin below fell silent. Not gradually. Instantly. As if someone had flipped a switch. Jamie and Ash waited another hour before climbing down. The front door was open. Devon's shoe was gone, so was the voice. The basement was sealed shut with 4 rusty chains that hadn't been there the night before. A new note was taped to the fridge, written in the same red ink. "You were lucky to not test this place again. Leave." They did. Ash never spoke of it again. Jamie tried. Therapists, online forums, police reports, but no trace of Devon was ever found. Not even dental records turned up. It was as if he had never existed. Except sometimes, late at night, Jamie would hear a knock on the door. "Hey, open up. Man, it's me. I'm cold." Jamie never went back to the cabin. He made his parents sell it. Begged, pleaded, then finally told them what he'd seen. Or at least what he thought he'd seen. They didn't believe him, of course. Not completely. Who could blame them? They chalked it up to grief, shock. A summer tragedy amplified by isolation and teenage recklessness. But Jamie knew the truth. Something ancient lived in that place. Something hungry. He moved on with his life, or tried to. New town, new school. People called him quiet, withdrawn. He kept a low profile, never got close to anyone. Ash had transferred schools, and the two of them eventually lost touch. It was just easier that way. Safer. He told himself the past couldn't follow him. That whatever had happened at the lake, it stayed there, rooted like rot in the foundations of that cursed cabin. But trauma doesn't vanish. It waits. It finds cracks in your defenses. By the time Jamie turned 22, he was living in a small college town, working part-time at a used bookstore, and renting a studio above an old laundromat. And no one knew about the lake. Or Devon. Or the voice at the door. Until the knocking started again. It was subtle at first, like old pipes or footsteps above his ceiling. But he lived on the top floor. There was no one above him. Then came the dreams. Dark woods. A cabin door. Devon's voice, still slow and syrupy. "Hey, it's me. Let me in." He'd wake in a cold sweat, unable to breathe. The room would feel wrong, off, like someone had just been there, watching him. And then, one night, he found the photo that had slipped out of a used book while he was inventorying a box of donations. A wrinkled Polaroid, yellowed with a eye in the photo. 3 teens standing on a dock by a lake. One of them was Devon. The others were strangers. The back was labeled, "Lakeside, July 97." Jamie nearly dropped it. He wasn't born until 2003. He turned it over again. The kid in the middle looked exactly like Devon. Not similar. Not a cousin? Identical. Jamie pocketed the photo and left work early. Something inside him had shifted. The house on the lake, whatever had taken Devin. This wasn't a one-time horror, it was cyclical, a pattern, a trap. That night, he dug up everything he could on the property. Old land records, obituaries, urban legends. What he found chilled him. The cabin wasn't just old, it was cursed. Originally built in 1912 by a preacher named Elijah Graven, the property had a long history of strange disappearances. Children, hikers, campers. Every decade, like clockwork, people vanished near the lake. Locals whispered of the mimic. A thing that wore the faces of loved ones to lure victims into the woods. It was said to rise strongest during the summer solstice, when the veil between the living and the dead thinned. Jamie ran searches on the other two teens in the photo. He found nothing. No records, no obits. Like they never existed. Just like Devin. He couldn't ignore it anymore. That it was drawing him back. The next morning, he packed a duffel bag, printed every piece of research he could find, and bought a disposable camera. Then he called Ash. The number didn't work. Out of desperation, Jamie reached out on social media at a week past point two. Then, finally, a reply from an anonymous burner account. I told you never to contact me. He wrote back instantly. You saw it too. You know I'm not crazy. Silence. Then, meet me where it started. Jamie didn't hesitate. He gassed up his car and headed back to Georgia. The drive took 11 hours as the miles passed. Dread unfurled in his stomach like vines crawling up his ribs by dusk. He was parked outside the old gravel road that led to the cabin, and it was overgrown now. Nature reclaiming what had been tainted. Ash was already there. He looked different, thinner, haunted, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in months. He didn't say hello. Are you insane? Ash asked. Why come back? Because it's not done with us. You brought it back into your life. That's how it works. It invites itself in. I didn't invite it, Jamie said. You don't have to. Thinking about it is enough. Talking about it, remembering it. They stood in silence. The sun dipped below the trees. Jamie pulled the photo from his pocket and handed it to Ash. Ash flinched. Where'd you get this? A book. It fell out. Look at the date. Ash turned it over. His face paled. This is impossible. Exactly. It's a pattern. Every few years. A new group. Same story. And you want to what? Break the cycle? Yes. Ash laughed bitterly. You don't break things like this. You survive them. Or you don't. They hiked toward the cabin. The trees whispered in the wind, and every creak of the branches felt like a voice. By the time they reached the clearing, night had fallen. The cabin looked untouched, like it had never been abandoned. Fresh wood, clean windows. Even the porch swing creaked gently, as if someone had just stepped off it. Ash stopped. This isn't right. It should be rotted empty. I think it's waiting for us, Jamie whispered. They stepped onto the porch. The door swung open by itself. Inside, everything was as they left it. The same lamp, the same photo frames, even the baseball bat, still leaning in the corner. Jamie turned to the fridge. The note was taped to it. Same red ink. 2 when in point 1 came out. Finish it. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Ash turned toward the basement. The door was wide open. Why do we always end up here? He asked softly. Jamie took a deep breath. Because that's where it lives. They descended together. This time, no flashlight and no hesitation. Just resolve. The air was thicker now. Not just cold, but wet, like the air inside a tomb. The crawl space at the back of the basement was glowing faintly. Ash stopped. I'm not going in there. We have to. Jamie stepped forward. The glow grew brighter, a pulsing, amber hue, like fire trapped behind fogged glass. Voices whispered all around them. Jamie? Ash? Please. Then a new voice. Help me. It was Devin, but this time, it sounded real. Jamie turned to Ash. Did you hear that? Ash nodded, eyes wide. It's really him. They stepped into the crawl space, and the world changed. The moment Jamie and Ash crossed the threshold of the crawl space, it was as if gravity let go. There was no sensation of falling, but the floor vanished beneath their feet and the basement, the entire cabin, was gone. The world flickered like an old film reel skipping frames 0.1 second. There was stone and shadow behind them. The next, they were standing in an impossible forest bathed in crimson light. The trees here weren't right. They were unnaturally tall, twisted into grotesque arches that seemed to move when no one was looking. Their bark pulsed with a dull red glow, like veins under flesh. The air was thick, humid, but charged with static. Every breath Jamie took crackled in his throat, and somewhere far off, a low droning sound, like an old generator, hummed just beneath the edge of perception. What is this place? Ash whispered. Jamie shook his head. We're not in the basement anymore. This is a mirror, Ash interrupted. It's the cabin, but underneath it, like the rot under the floorboards. Jamie turned slowly behind them. There was no entrance, just trees. The crawl space was gone and a way back. Something moved ahead, just beyond the next thicket at a flicker of motion, too fast to track. They froze. Then the voice came again. Jamie? Please? It was unmistakable, Devin, and it was close. They followed the sound, moving cautiously along a faint trail that twisted through the trees. The deeper they went, the darker it became, even though there was no sun above, only that sick red glow from the trees. The droning grew louder. They emerged into a clearing, and in the center stood a stone altar, cracked and overgrown with ivy that looked like it bled when torn, bound to it with what looked like roots or veins. Was Devin? His eyes snapped open. Jamie? Jamie rushed forward. Ash held him back. Wait. How do we know it's really him? Because he said my name like only he would. That thing that came to the door. It mimicked him, but it never was him. Ash still looked uncertain, but stepped aside. Jamie approached the altar. Devin looked weak, pale, but alive. His wrists were bound by pulsating strands of something organic, and his chest rose and fell shallowly. I thought you were dead, Jamie whispered. I was close, Devin rasped. It pulled me in, but it couldn't finish it. Not completely. That I've been stuck, dreaming and awake at the same time, watching. Watching what? Devin's eyes darted behind Jamie. The others. Jamie turned around. From the treeline, shapes began to emerge. Not human. Not anymore. Some still wore faces. Familiar ones. Friends. Family. Others were just bone and moss and forgotten flesh. They moved awkwardly, like puppets with snapped strings. Ash drew a knife. We need to move now. Jamie pulled at Devin's bindings. The strands screamed as they tore, flailing like worms in agony. The forest reacted. The trees groaned. The air trembled as soon as Devin was free. The altar split open down the middle, revealing a black pit beneath it, and something climbed out. It was tall, humanoid in shape, but stitched together from pieces of others. Dozens of faces writhed across its surface. Some screaming, others laughing. Its eyes were hollow, glowing with the same red as the forest. Jamie staggered back, dragging Devin. Ash stood his ground. Go, he said. No, Jamie shouted. We do this together. Ash looked over his shoulder. One of us has to stay. That's the rule. It feeds on balance. That if 3 go in, only 2 come out. Jamie froze. He remembered the note. The red ink. .2 went in. 1 came out. Finish it. Ash stepped toward the creature. Tell my story, he said. Tell them we didn't run. Then he screamed and charged. The thing absorbed him like water into sand. Jamie ran. Devin limped beside him, half dragged, half running. The forest howled behind them. The trees began to twist and snap, trying to seal off their escape. Somehow, instinct led them back. A shimmer in the air. A ripple. Jamie didn't think. He dove. There was a sound like rushing water and the scream of breaking glass. Then silence. He opened his eyes. They were back in the basement. It was daylight. The air was still. Devin lay, unconscious beside him. Ash was gone. Forever. Jamie and Devin made it out of the cabin that day. They never went back. The crawlspace was gone, sealed under a concrete floor. The chains returned to the basement door, now rusted and immovable in time. They moved on, therapy, new lives, but they kept in touch. Once a year, on the summer solstice, they meet at the edge of a lake and throw something into the water. A photo, a note, a named to keep it fed.to remind it they remember. Because the minute they forget, it'll come knocking again. A year passed. Then another. And another still. Jamie and Devin did everything they could to avoid the cabin, the lake, even the entire state of Georgia. Jamie transferred colleges. Devin never went back to school at all. He lived with his sister in Maine, taking odd jobs and never staying anywhere too long. Neither of them spoke about what had happened, at least not publicly. In fact, they had an unspoken agreement. Don't talk about it unless it's absolutely necessary. Because every time they did, weird things would start happening. Again. Knocking, scratching voices. Flickering lights. But every solstice, like clockwork, they honored their pact. On June 21st, they'd each go to the nearest body of water, no matter where they were, and throw something in, an offering. Nothing big. Never the same thing twice. A page torn from a journal. A drawing. A burned match. A whisper of a name. Jamie's therapist once asked if it was some kind of annual trauma ritual. He didn't answer. He didn't dare. Because deep down he suspected the truth. They hadn't escaped. Not really. They'd just been spared. And someday, the lake would want something in return. It started again on the 5th anniversary. Jamie had just moved into a new place. A small but cozy apartment on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. It was a good neighborhood. Quiet. Safe. He'd been sleeping well, working a steady job at a community center, even dating again. For a while, things had felt almost normal, until he woke up to find muddy footprints in his hallway. Not big. Ones. Child-sized. Barefoot. They trailed from the front door to the kitchen, circled the living room, and then disappeared into nothing. There had been no rain and no guests, and he always locked the door. He scrubbed them clean and tried to convince himself it was some elaborate prank. Kids. A stray raccoon. Maybe. He checked the door and windows and no signs of forced entry. Then he noticed something else. On his nightstand was a photo. A Polaroid. It was one he'd never seen before. It showed the three of them. Jamie, Devin, and Ash, standing in front of the cabin, all smiling, except Ash's face was smudged out as if someone had dragged a thumb through the emulsion while it was still developing. His stomach twisted. He called Devin and no answer. He called again, voicemail. That night, Jamie had the dream. The cabin, lit by moonlight. A voice calling his name. Knock, knock. Then he saw Ash. Not as he was in real life, but younger, almost childlike, standing barefoot at the foot of Jamie's bed. Soaked from head to toe. He opened his mouth, and lake water poured out. His eyes were filled with static. Jamie screamed himself awake. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. New voicemail. He played it. Devin's voice, garbled and low. It's back. I didn't do the ritual. I forgot. I'm sorry. I think it's coming for me. Jamie. Don't. Then static. Then silence. Jamie drove 12 hours that day, non-stop, until he reached Maine. He found Devin's apartment in disarray. The front door was open, keys dangling from the lock. Inside, the furniture was overturned. The fridge was wide open. A circle of salt had been drawn on the floor, broken in one spot. And on the table, scratched into the wood. One went in, none came out. Jamie didn't find a body. Not a drop of blood. Just an echo. A feeling. and in the corner, a trail of muddy footprints. Leading to the sink, inside it, floating face down in a bowl of cloudy water, was another Polaroid. This time, just Jamie. Standing alone on the dock, the lake behind him black and endless. After that, Jamie stopped running. He went back one final time. The cabin was still there, waiting, like it had always been. A monument to memory at a wound that never healed. He didn't bring friends. He didn't tell anyone. He walked the trail at dusk, sat on the front porch until the stars came out. He brought with him only one thing. A box of ashes. Ashes. Not his body, of course. Ash's parents had never known what happened to him. But Jamie had burned every photo, every belonging, every scrap of memory that could tie Ash to this place. He poured the ashes into the lake, said nothing, and waited. The knock came at midnight. Not at the door, but inside his head. "Jamie," the voice said. He didn't answer. "Jamie, you're the only one left." He sat still. "You owe me." "No," he said aloud. "I don't." The wind howled. The trees moaned. Then came the screams, hundreds of them, familiar and not. All the faces the lake had stolen. Jamie stood, walked back to the edge of the dock. "You want someone?" he shouted. "Take me, end it." The water rippled, something moved beneath the surface, then silence. The lake stilled. A single bubble rose, then another. Then, nothing, just the stars, reflected across the dark mirror of the water. Jamie turned and walked away. He hasn't been back since. He no longer hears knocking. But every year, on June 21st, he visits a quiet pond in the woods and throws in something small, just in case. If you ever hear a knock late at night, think twice before answering. Especially if the voice says, "It's me. I'm cold." Don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back next time for more true horror that stays with you.